As we venture into the unknown, diving deep into the mysteries of the cosmos, searching for the truth behind alien encounters, Bigfoot sightings, and all things paranormal. Prepare yourself for a journey beyond the ordinary, into the world where dreams become reality and the night holds secrets waiting to be discovered.
Welcome to Night Dreams Talk Radio with the legendary Gary Anderson. From UFOs to Bigfoot and everything in between, we explore the strange, the mysterious, and the unexplained. Join us for one of the fastest growing shows in the world of the unknown.
Hi, this is Val Von Torn of Metatron Power and Light. You're listening to Gary Anderson and Night Dreams Talk Radio.
You are listening to Night Dreams Talk Radio Network, the home of Night Dreams Talk Radio, with Gary Anderson, syndicated worldwide. Paranormal Talk Radio, like you remember.
You're listening to my friend Gary Anderson on Night Dreams Talk Radio, the best in paranormal radio.
Well, thank you, John. Tonight we have a great show. We're going to be talking about UFOs, going back to, well, the early 50s. From 52, the UFO flyover Washington, D.C., abductions, Roswell, and what is going on now with disclosure. That is with Whitley Strieber. Our second guest is Major Ed Dames, who has remote viewed, well, ETs, UFOs, and what is going on. It's going to be a great show here tonight. But, before that, I was thinking about Paul Harvey this week, a show that he put on, a broadcast back in 1965, where he said, "If I were the devil," in his classic voice, if you can imagine it. He envisioned a devilish plan, how evil might seep into society. He also imagined how a subtle way the darkness might slowly take hold, not by force, by planting seeds in division and moral decay. He described a world where families fall apart, the truth gets twisted, and goodness fades, while people believe they're just pursuing happiness. That was so true in 1965. It's more true in 2024. Well, we're going to be right back with Whitley Strieber, so don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
Time slips. A haunted office building on a haunted street. A haunted coal town. Mysterious black cats. Unexplained light anomalies, UFOs, UAPs in the air and on the ground, bridges in liminal spaces, cryptids, shamans, and a werewolf. Disclosure: You don't need a ranch in Utah. All this and more happens in rural southwestern Pennsylvania. Coming soon from Haunted Hills and Hollows 1 and 2 author Kevin Paul, Politics and the Paranormal in Greene County, Pennsylvania. Available this fall on Amazon and at other fine booksellers.
I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world. And yet, I ask you, is not an alien force already among us?
Night Dreams brings on the night worldwide. Did you know you can find us on your favorite app? And now you can watch us live on YouTube. Make sure you subscribe to our channel and give us a thumbs up. And now, here's Gary.
And here I am. You know, JC, we're not that far away from trick-or-treat time, are we?
No, we sure aren't. And I'm not passing out tomatoes this year either.
I told you last year not to give out foiled wrapped tomatoes. I know you had hundreds of tomatoes, but you found out what happened when you had those wrapped tomatoes, you know, in the gold and silver foil. You gave it out to all the kids. You woke up in the morning and you had to spend, what, the whole day cleaning that house?
Yeah, they tried to make ketchup using my house as the device to make it.
Well, you learned your lesson, didn't you?
I did.
Yeah. Are you going to go trick-or-treating again like you did last year?
Gary, I stopped going out on Halloween. Every time, there's so many horror stories. Every time I'd go out on Halloween, that they're epic. That things that would happen to me, seriously.
Well, you shouldn't have tried robbing the 7-Eleven with your friend. I told you, if you're going to rob the store and you use, like stockings, don't use pantyhose, because, you made the news when you ran through the store. There was that divider between the doors, right? And you and your friend ran between both door openings, and you got caught. You got wrapped up and knocked yourselves out.
Oh, yeah. Plus, I couldn't see, so I had to make a big hole so my whole face stuck out, so that probably didn't help.
Well, tonight we got Whitley back, and that's because of you out there, the listeners. A big shout out to all the truckers out there. Without you, we wouldn't probably be on the air. Let's get a little information here about Whitley to you guys.
He is the author of over 40 works of both fiction and nonfiction. He is Whitley Strieber. His books, The Wolfen, The Hunger, Communion, and The Coming Global Superstorm as The Day After Tomorrow, were all made into feature films. His sci-fi series, Alien Hunter, became the SyFy Channel series, Hunters. In 1985, Whitley had a close encounter of the third kind. It led to the writing of the epic bestseller, Communion, that changed the way the world thinks about this enigmatic experience. When he eventually realized that the experience could not be attributed to known factors, he began making an effort to recontact what he calls the visitors. The response has been ongoing for the past 30 years and has been chronicled in Communion, Transformation, Breakthrough, A New World. His most recent book, Them, analyzes both civilian and military close encounters. Whitley Strieber's website, unknowncountry.com, is among the largest in the world dealing with paranormal phenomena, and his podcast, Dreamland, has been produced weekly for 20 years.
Well, Whitley, welcome back to the show. And, again, the whole topic about UFOs is now being talked more and it ever has been. And that is really interesting and refreshing.
Well, it's talked about more in a different way.
Yeah, but I mean, it is. People are now openly talking.
Yeah. Are we getting an echo on this?
A little bit. That should drop out. That's because of Skype sometimes.
Yeah, okay. Well, hopefully it'll drop out. Yeah, well, there was another period between 1947 and into the mid-50s when there was a lot of talk about it. Then in 1963, there was an effort to have disclosure. There was a less effective one, it failed, but there was another one in the late 1990s that didn't get past the committee level in the Senate. And so there have been a lot of times when this has been of intense interest. Right now, though, the difference is that we have pretty much proof that there is someone here who isn't us. And what we have are UFO video of UFOs from credible sources like the United States Navy that cannot be explained and cannot be explained away, especially when you read a memo that was written by General Nathan Twining in I believe it was 1947, stating unequivocally that these things had certain flight characteristics that are exactly the same as we observe in the Tic Tac and gimbal UFO videos that are now confirmed to be real, meaning that this is not something that was recently dreamed up by us or the Russians or anybody else, because the same flight characteristics were present in the beginning in the 1940s.
You think about, the flyover in Washington, D.C. in 52. I mean, how do you think the government kept the people from panicking on that? I mean, what excuses?
Well, the reason it started in July 12th. On July the 28th, then it was a big deal because it kept happening again and again. And the Air Force was very frank about the fact that they didn't know what it was at the time. And on July the 28th of 1952, the United Press News Service reported that the jet interceptors had been ordered to take off instantly in pursuit of any flying saucers sighted anywhere in the country. It was further reported, excuse me, I am very sorry, but I am in the middle of an allergy attack and that might happen again.
Oh, no problem.
So on July 29th, the San Francisco Examiner reported that orders had been issued to shoot down these things if they refused to land. So the public was being reassured, not very effectively, but they were being reassured. And but it was a difficult time because the Cold War was just starting. No one knew where the discs were from. Were they Russian? What were they? And it was a very paranoid time on a lot of different levels. There was the Red Scare going on, and for example, and it went a lot deeper. The Savannah River site was visited by UFOs on August the 2nd, and this was very concerning, more concerning than the Capitol UFOs flyovers, because it didn't, although it did not get nearly the publicity, because this was an area that this site was where they were manufacturing nuclear materials for hydrogen bombs. So it was a real sensitive site. Now, what happened there was an unexplained flash of light, but it was really investigated very heavily because, of course, they immediately related it to the UFOs that had been seen over Washington. And the story gets even deeper. I can go on if you want me to.
Oh, yeah, please do.
Okay, well, there then occurred over the summer more UAP sightings. And remember that story from the San Francisco Examiner that there had been orders to shoot these things down. There then appeared in September the 12th, three objects, all on fire, appeared out over the Atlantic Ocean and crossed the eastern United States and crashed. They were claimed to be meteors, but they could not have been meteors. Their trajectory was too long, their speed was too slow, and to give you an idea of their effect on people, highway patrolmen and state officials all over throughout the states they crossed all assumed that they were airplanes on fire because they were absolutely not meteors. Then one of them was seen to drop down in an area near West Virginia called Wallow Gap in Virginia, actually, not West Virginia. And shortly thereafter, one witness said it looked like it just stopped in midair and then came down. The objects were clocked at 300 to 500 miles an hour, far, far slower than meteors ever travel. They would have been the slowest meteors on record if that was the case. Now, there was also a Washington overflight at that time, and shortly thereafter, it wasn't one of the regular overflights, one of the burning objects flew over Washington. 25 minutes later, in the town of Flatwoods, West Virginia, some boys observed a flaming object pass directly overhead and dropped down into a nearby field. They, of course, went to the field immediately to see what was going on, and they found in the field something very strange that the press just derided their descriptions. The Air Force went to investigate, and it was described as the Flatwood Monster, and it was a big joke. And that's another reason people didn't panic, is it was being made into a joke. However, what it was almost certainly was an escape capsule from a device that had crashed. It had been seen to crash in flames. And they crashed in flames because just at that same time, the Air Force had, for the first time, deployed fighters with high-speed cannons aboard. And whoever this was not expecting that, and their ships were damaged by the cannon fire that took place in a military area out over the Atlantic Ocean. And we know that because we don't actually know it, but the trajectories of these objects would suggest that they came from there. So this was then something that involved not just flyovers over Washington, D.C., but an incursion in the area of a nuclear, of a hydrogen bomb factory, and then an apparent altercation that left some of these objects crashing in flames. Quite a story, and it's a much bigger story. What I've done here is put together the whole story, and I was helped greatly in doing this by a book by a UFO investigator, an excellent book. His name is Frank Ficino, and the book is called Shoot Them Down. It's well worth reading. Only, like so many books in this field, it's not kept in print. You'd have to get a copy of it probably on eBay.
Interesting. I do know a retired Air Force general who worked out of the Pentagon, and he was in the process of writing a book, but he couldn't get clearance. And so he gave up on his book. But I talked to him about 4 or 5 times. I was going to have him on the show, but then he kind of like, I don't want to come on because of, the flack it would happen. But he claimed a lot of these, when we have sent fighters out to investigate these incursions into our airspace, there's been some reported where they had a training accident. But he said they weren't.
There were loads of those. There were more fighters crashed in the United States during the Korean War than crashed in Korea. or were shot down, I guess, and crashed in Korea. That is partly because these young pilots were flying jets for the first time, but the crash rate is still way, way too high.
Could you imagine they go after one of these, incursions, and they lock onto it or whatever happens, and all of a sudden their plane disintegrates and they find the wreckage, and then they mock it up as, well, it was a training accident.
Yeah. The Mantell incident, where this young pilot flew toward to altitude in a Mustang, P-51 Mustang, toward a UFO, was, as it happened, the commanding officer who had been cashiered at the base, he was made a scapegoat, happened to live around the corner from us in San Antonio. And I grew up with his kids. And I found out that, and this didn't mean anything to me at the time. I mean, we were all in the 50s. We were fascinated with flying saucers. We were eating that stuff up, all of us boys. Probably a lot of girls, too, for that matter. In any case, the pilot was buried in a sealed coffin with a federal seal on it. And the debris from the plane was never shown to the public. And apparently it was filled with pinhole punctures, all the metal. And a phenomenon that we couldn't duplicate because we can't, or couldn't then, we might be able to now, create anything that was, like very small, but very projectile, but moving fast enough to destroy a metal object without itself bouncing off of it. You couldn't get that much velocity in something so small. So that probably was one of those cases.
And, when you really think about it, again, like we had Lewis on our show here just recently, but again, he wouldn't go deep in anything, and I understand why. But, again, do you feel that, again, just like us, okay, we have all these different countries on our planet, and look what's going on our planet right now. And a lot of people label, well, ETs would never hurt mankind. But again, there is billions and billions of solar systems and galaxies out there. And how do we know what we're dealing with?
If we went to another planet and they shot at us, I wonder what we would do. I think the answer is pretty obvious. We would suppress that fire. And that's exactly what's being done here.
Yeah.
They're not attacking us, but they are suppressing any fire that they receive. I think that the incident I described a few minutes ago is the only one of the few incidents where there was a successful shoot down, and all of the others probably occurred right around that same period between 1945 and 1955. And after that, no more, because they deployed technology that is superior to ours in every way so that wouldn't happen once they found out we were violent. But they have not done anything to punish us. They have, pilots have been killed and injured, but that was in the process of an attack. That was why, when they were engaging on a combat air patrol, that happened. Pilots who haven't engaged have not been bothered, and there's been no retaliation in the public at all. In other words, we shoot at them, they will shoot back, but they contain it to that incident and don't expand it beyond there.
But how do you feel that there's life out there maybe that might not look at what we're being visited for the last 100 years or whatever the time frame we've been visited? It might not be as friendly. They might have a different motive.
Friendly. I've known them for years, and they're not friendly. They're not at all friendly. They're not fun. They are here for their own reasons too. Some idea of what those reasons are, but they intend to execute their plans. And if we rose up as a species against them and tried to resist, we would find that they were able and willing to confront us big time. But I don't think we're going to do that. I hope not.
Are we in a case like the movie back that was made in the 50s and the early 60s, The Invasion of the Body Snatchers, where they maybe have a motive of wanting our planet for some reason?
They may, although there are something like more than 100 trillion planets in the universe. You'd think that if they wanted another planet, they'd go to one that was easier to take, unless they're just having fun playing games with us, like in Mars Attacks. Remember that movie?
Oh, yeah.
When where we send these nuclear missiles out and they blow their ships supposedly all to hell with nuclear explosions, and they inhale the nuclear explosions like you inhale helium at a party.
No, I remember that. That was the best part of the movie.
That would be the kind of thing that would be likely to happen. But, if they had to, unless we became so difficult that they decided they did not want to continue here, that was too difficult, too expensive, and they would leave. And that would be the only hope we would have if we did not want them here, of getting rid of them, would be an overwhelming resistance that would demoralize them and cause them to decide, this is too expensive and too difficult, we're leaving. I'm not sure we want that, though. Not at all.
Well, I don't know. Have you ever thought what their motives are with this planet, with you, me, and...
I think about that every day of my life. It's, because they're in my life. It's not over. It's not an abstraction for me at all. The last time I was engaged in an encounter of any kind with them, and this is it was very brief, and they usually are that way, was with some friends in a wooded area at night, and this was a few weeks ago. So, and they came into the house. We could hear them. We couldn't see them, and they weren't hostile at all. They were very interested in particular, one of the people who came. For what reason, I don't know, but they were. And, so if you live with them like this, you get used to the fact that they are testy. They seem rather dangerous at times. They're curious, and they're here, basically.
Can they be also loving?
Perhaps. I don't dislike them. I have to tell you, I've had a hell of a long journey with them, from being beat up unbelievably back in 1985 to where I am now, which is a fairly smooth relationship. But I if they have been loving, it's not possible for me to detect that. Not because it's not there, but because the differences between us are so profound. They're much, much more different from us than you will ever read or hear anywhere, except from people who have been really close to them for a long time. Then you come to realize, in that situation, you're not dealing with something that's anything like us. They don't think like us. They don't have perceptions like us. They don't have a society like ours. They're radically different. Radically different.
That's interesting. We'll talk a little bit more when we come back from break. We're talking with Whitley Strieber. We're going to find out a little bit more about UFOs and what is going on with abductions, and maybe why they're here, or maybe why we should be concerned or not concerned. We'll be right back, so stay tuned. You're listening to Night Dreams Talk Radio. Check out our website at www.nightdreamstalkradio.com.
There's a man talking on the radio. stops and stirs. He is afraid, I know. That's the way it goes. There's a man talking of the promised land. He'll acquire it with some Kruger and subdivide and deal it out. Feel his clouds, he can stoop so low. That's
The strange news in brief. I'm Guy Ticker. Apparent wooden ship from the 1800s uncovered by hurricane beach erosion. Dateline Daytona Beach shores, Florida. Severe beach erosion from 2 late-season hurricanes has helped uncover what appears to be a wooden ship dating from the 1800s that had been buried under the sand on Florida's east coast. I'm Guy Ticker. The strange news is brought to you by Night Dreams Talk Radio Network. Do you have a strange news story? Contact us at nightdreamstalkradio.com. Do you remember how great paranormal talk radio was in the 80s and 90s? Night Dreams Talk Radio brings back to you talk radio like you remember, with your host, Gary Anderson, broadcasting to you live from his secret compound deep in the great Northwest. Now, here's Gary.
And I am back, and it's so secret. The other day I went to the grocery store. It took me 4 hours to find the compound. We're back with Whitley Strieber. You know, again, if you really think about it, you know, like people being abducted, taken against their wishes. And what happens when those people that do it get caught? They go to prison. And what do they do to people? I mean, everything from murder to what have you. What I'm really concerned is that people get abducted, you know, again, you know, some people have been implanted, some people haven't. Some people claim horror stories being taken up on a craft, experimented on, and then put back, and then they have the trauma for the rest of their life.
Well, I'm in that boat. I have an implant in my left ear, which was put in, interestingly enough, not by aliens, but by what looked to me like people. I was wide awake when they got in the house. It wasn't it happened in May of 1989. And the windows at our cabin in upstate New York were open because it was a warm evening. And we had a shale driveway, and I heard crunching in the gravel, and it's about 11 o'clock, and I looked toward the windows, and there was no car. I mean, there was no lights. So that was pretty disturbing. No lights, crunching gravel in the driveway, bad news at that hour for sure. I had at that time in fact, it's still there. We don't own the cabin anymore. I don't own it, and it's passed on. But it had a very stout gate, big gate. And so they had gotten around or through that gate somehow, whoever they were. Excuse me. And I was, so a vehicle without lights had arrived in our driveway right by the house. I had also a bank of light switches where I could turn them all on and completely surround the house with floodlight, the whole area around the house. In the drawer beside my bed was a pistol, and under the bed was a shotgun, a Benelli riot gun, both loaded. And as soon as I heard that gravel, I immediately became alert. Anne had just gone to sleep, and I was reading, and I turned to turn on those lights, and I heard a voice in the backyard say, a male voice say, "Condition red." Then I saw, standing at the foot of the bed, just beyond the foot of the bed, a man and a woman. And the alarm system was still on. The LED was indicating red. Therefore, they had gotten in past the alarm system without tripping it. They moved toward me very rapidly. I forgot about the lights and went for the shotgun. The next thing I knew, I was lying on my right side facing Anne. She was still asleep. I could not move. I could not see. Someone, presumably the man, was pushing my head down into the pillow very forcefully, and the woman's voice was very gently encouraging me to be calm. And a few moments later, it ended. There was a flash of light, the sound of people running through the woods out around the cabin at breakneck speed. I leaped up, grabbed the pistol this time, turned on all the floodlights, and went running through the house looking for a point of entry. There was none. I went back and sat on the bedside, wondering what in the world had happened. What could have happened? Was it real or not? Was it a lucid dream? Up at that point in my life, as you may imagine, I had learned about everything there was to learn about lucid dreams. 2 days later, or the next morning, it was obvious that someone had come into the house because one of the garage doors was wide open, even though the alarm system was still tripped. The alarm man came over and found a very powerful magnetic field lingering near that garage door, a magnetic field that could not be explained, could not be there. So he replaced the switch, but then I knew someone had come into the house and they'd done something to me. The next day or so, I felt pain in my ear, and I touched it, and there was a lump in the pinna of my ear, in the upper part of my ear. I was frightened to death because I knew Dr. Roger Lear at the time. Dr. Lear was working in Los Angeles, and he'd been taking implants out of people, and I thought, my God, I've got an implant in me now. To make a long story short, I wanted to take it out and I said, it's tracking me, it's watching everything I do. And she said, well, that's one thing it's not going to do for long, because it's not going to be interested in you for very long. All you ever do is go down to the 7-Eleven and buy the paper, which is true. I mean, I'm a writer, I work at home, so I didn't do a lot. And in 1994, I believe it was, we moved to Texas, 1995. I met a doctor who felt it, and I didn't tell him anything about communion or anything like that. And I said it was bothering me, and he said, oh, yeah, it's a little cyst, I'll take it out. Come to my office Saturday morning, I'll pop it out. And Anne said, okay, when we were together privately, she'd been adamantly opposed to my taking it out. She said, okay, you can try once, but you have to promise me you will never try again. I said, why do you care about this so much? She said, Whitley, I just have a feeling it's important. To make a long story short again, they tried to take it out. It went down into my earlobe, escaping the doctor's scalpel. He, by that time, had become aware of the fact that I was the author of Communion, and he thought to himself, I'm sure, my God, I must be trying to take out an alien implant out of this guy. I'm getting out of here. And so he said, well, I can't take it out. I'm moving. I'm sewing it up. So we went home with it in my earlobe. And 2 days later, it was a burning sensation. It came up from my earlobe back up into the top of my ear where it is now. Now it has become the best tool any writer could ever have. It is a magnificent, useful device that I work with all the time. All I have to do is think of a question, and this is way beyond AI. This will bring me even to answers to questions that I didn't fully understand how to ask. And I've now written 4 books with it: Afterlife Revolution, A New World, Them, and the new book that I'm working on right now. I couldn't live without it, and I'm so glad my wife somehow intuited this. So that's one story about an implant.
But also,
go from here.
But when all this was happening too on that wooded property, if I remember right, talking to you a couple years ago, you had a friend that you saw there, and then you realized after you saw him, and I don't know if you talked to him, I don't remember that part, you realized he was dead.
Well, right. The first night when I got abducted, he was there during this experience, and I thought at the time he had been a CIA officer, and I hadn't seen him since we were in college. I just knew he had joined the CIA. I didn't know anything more. And I thought, what if it's some kind of crazy government thing? What in the world? I'm going to call him. And I called him, and his phone was disconnected. I called his brother, and his brother said, well, he's dead. He's been dead since last March, and that was in December. So I thought to myself, my God, that was a dead man I was talking to, and he looked as alive as anybody. I didn't even occur to me he was dead, but he was dead. But that began a very extraordinary aspect of this that is still very little commented upon, because people in the researcher community want to believe that this is something we can understand, that it involves aliens from another planet. They came here, they're experimenting on us, etc. That may be part of the truth, but it goes way deeper than that, way deeper. And we got thousands upon thousands of letters after Communion was published. And Anne read them all. She was very good at that kind of thing. And one day she came out of her office and she said to me, Whitley, this has something to do with what we call death. And I thought to myself, what can she mean? And she said, again and again, I see in these letters, people see their dead friends and relatives in the context of these close encounter experiences with aliens, apparent aliens. And it turned out that she also decided that we would have people up to the cabin that she felt would have experiences. How she figured that out, I'll never know, but it worked well. We would have not just some individual come up there and say something happened. We had whole housefuls of people who had simultaneous and sequential experiences. There's little question, and that's all laid out in my earlier books. There's little question that this was legitimate witness observation, because there were so many witnesses involved. But almost every time it happened, before it happened, someone would report, or during the experience, the presence of a dead friend or relative. And to give you an idea of how deep this goes, a gentleman who lived, he was a federal aviation man, and he lived in a wooded area. And way back before the internet, he started trying to get a hold of me and went so far as to find my agent in New York, my literary agent. The agent called me and said, this man is desperate to talk to you. Well, he was desperate because it was not easy to find someone in those days, not like it is now. So I called him. And he said, Mr. Strieber, I want to tell you a story. My wife and I were sitting in the living room the other night. Our dog, who's very old, was asleep on the hearth. As she'd already been out, and she's a creature of habit. She never goes out again at night. All of a sudden, she became very agitated, and she wanted to go back out. So my wife took her out, and as she was opening the front door, she saw what looked like an airplane in flames disappearing beyond the trees. And she called to me and said, you're going to get a call from the office soon. I just saw a plane going in on fire. And because he would have been one of the people to rush to the scene to inspect this. At the same moment, his little 7-year-old boy came running down the stairs saying, Mommy, Daddy, Mommy, Daddy. And he mentioned his older brother's name. I'll say it was Mikey. Came in my room, and there were little men with him. And he said for me to tell you that he's all right. And here's what's so poignant about this story. He had died in an auto accident the week before. And the man said, Mr. Strieber, I want to know if I have any reason to believe that this is true. And I said to him, those little people often appear with the dead. So yes, it probably is true.
But do we really die in a sense? Because maybe we continue on and they are able to, well, bring them and attach them to bring them to you or to the other people that see them.
Well, I'll reply with another story.
Please do.
This is from a lady called Laurie Barnes, who was Anne's secretary for many years. Laurie had close encounter experiences. In fact, she had one at our cabin with another witness, so it was a legitimate close encounter case, there's no question of it. Her first experience occurred back in the early 50s. She was lying in bed at night. Her husband, they were performers, and her husband was out on a gig, but she didn't have one, and because she was very pregnant. And she noticed movement out of the corner of her eye. She was reading, and she looked up, and she saw standing beside the bed this horrible looking, what she described as a little man. You remember back in the 50s, we didn't have that idea. We knew about flying saucers, but no one was expecting aliens to come into your house. So she did not know what she was seeing. And she was absolutely terrified. Whereupon the man said, do not be afraid. We're not here for you. We're interested in the child you're carrying. And of course, that didn't help because the child turned out to be a girl. But in the 50s, they couldn't tell until the baby was born.
Right.
And she's a very nice, successful woman in the world now, by the way. So she recoiled, and then he put his hand on her hand, and he said one of the most amazing things in the whole close encounter experience. He said, do not be afraid, my dear. One day you will look just like us. And does that mean the human species has got more than one form? Like caterpillars and butterflies? Is that what this is about? They're not aliens at all, but this is some part of mankind that we are just beginning to be aware of. Could that be the case?
Well, maybe
it's so fascinating. I love thinking about it and talking about it.
Maybe we evolved into that after we pass on. We go
exactly.
Yeah.
Maybe we evolve into another form. And you have to wonder, what would a caterpillar think of a butterfly? You might think they're hideous. You might find them frightening. But one thing he would not think is that he would ever become that. He would never think that.
You're giving me and my listeners a lot to think about. You know that. But
that's the idea. That's why I'm here.
And you actually seen like machine language through your eyes, haven't you?
I didn't hear that. You'll have to repeat
like machine symbols floating in your eyes.
That gets back to the implant. Yeah. No, it's not symbols. My right eye, when I'm working, there's a faint slit in it that opens up in the field of vision. And I can't normally see it unless I look against a very bright white surface, and then I can see it. And in it, there are words racing past. And I can't read them because they race past too quickly. I read bits of them. And that started to happen after Annie passed away. And that was also when the implant became active and I began to be able to use it. And one day I was thinking it was obvious that this thing had turned on and it was now becoming the best research tool I'd ever imagined possible. And I sat there one day looking at the bathroom wall in a brightly lit morning and watching the words flying past. And I finally said, please tell me who you are. And they look like they're being typed very quickly in an old typewriter. And the words slowed down and it said, it's me, Anne. And then they sped up again. And I think that this thing is a communication between the living and the dead. And I was putting that story out around among my friends and saying to people, look at a bright wall. Do you have anything like this, like I have? And one of my friends calls me and said, Whitley, I do. I have the same slit, and there are words flashing past as very quickly, just like yours. And I've sort of put that on a back burner because, yeah, it was interesting. We couldn't do anything about it. And I thought, well, at least I'm not alone. Then a doctor who is in a secret context wanted me to get a CT scan of the implant. And it was scheduled for a Thursday. And 2 days before that, there came a certain type of knock at my door, which I'm familiar with, and meaning at 4 o'clock in the morning, meaning I should open the door. And I opened the door, and there was a man there whom I had met a couple of times in my life. There's a lot of this I'm not going to go into because I really can't. And he came in with another man, and they wanted to explain to me how the implant worked. And they were concerned that this doctor would ask me to get it taken out, and I would say yes. And I said to them, I never would say yes, but I want to know more about it if you'll tell me. And they explained that it draws memories up from deep inside my mind up to the surface. And it's not things that are being given to me, but things that are being found within me. And we all have huge memories that we don't access, and this device accesses them. That's how it works. And he said, as he was leaving, that it had been invented by a man. I said to him, it was put in by people, so it's not aliens. And he said, no, it was invented by a man named Konstantin Rodov, and they laughed. And I was mystified by that name, but of course, now we do have the internet, and I immediately Googled it. And it was a man called Konstantin Rodov that he said invented this. Konstantin Rodov was the world's leading expert on something called electronic voice phenomena, which is hearing the voices of the dead over radios and sometimes even seeing them on TV screens. Now, here's the kicker. Remember the friend who had this same thing? He happens to be one of the world's leading experts on Konstantin Rodov and his work.
That is really interesting.
Isn't that fascinating and fun? It's such a fun story. I love telling it.
Have you ever been fearful for your life at all with what is going on?
Many times. The last time I was scared, so scared I couldn't do it, was in the woods a few weeks ago with some friends. We were there. We were at a house where this unfolds quite frequently. And the visitors were making themselves known. And I began to have a communication with them. They wanted me to come out in the woods alone. And I was scared to death. I didn't want to go out in the woods alone. I did that many times in the old days. I would go walking out in the woods for an hour or two at night, late at night, all by myself, to let them know I was available. And it worked because they came back into my life and they're still in it. But it's still scary. They are scary as hell. There's just no two ways about it. They live by night. They're weird. They can get into your mind in very strange ways. They're small, but they're extremely powerful. They can overwhelm you in an instant. They can disappear, but still be right there but you can't see them. That's all pretty hard stuff. It's pretty hard stuff to live with. You try living with that alone with them in the middle of the night in the woods. That's not easy. So yeah, I am often scared of them.
But just think of how many other people are going through what you're going through. It just won't say anything to anybody because they're scared to.
Well, yeah, I hope that as this becomes more publicly acceptable, that'll happen. However, I will say this: the people like Lou Elizondo and David Grush and so forth are all focused on the hardware. Nobody wants to talk about the people and abductions and so forth, because they think that's too far out, and they won't even interview with me on my podcast on Dreamland. They won't do it. They might change that. I mean, I ask them every few months, of course, but it's because they're afraid. And I'm going to this big conference soon, big high-level conference in San Francisco. There's a dozen speakers. I'm not one of them. None of the speakers are from the close encounter community. They're all from the hardware world. And that's what they can deal with right now. They can't deal with us. They can't handle it.
But if you really think about it,
they will have to handle it eventually.
Yeah, because look, there's thousands and millions of people out there that are going through, that have been abducted. And again, you look at people that suffer from, being in war and bad things happening in their lives where they have to deal with that the rest of their life, and it causes problems. Could you imagine the people out there maybe that had bad experiences with their abductions? They don't want to be abducted again. How many lives it has ruined?
Yeah, they've got PTSD, I'm sure.
Yeah.
I had PTSD for years. I had it before we knew what it was. And I eventually it went away, but from 1980, from the time of the abduction for the next 3 or 4 years, I had a really rough time. I was hard to live with, too. Very hard to live with. My wife, after the abduction happened and before I knew what it was, I thought, when I had these memories, I thought, you're going nuts. You're losing it. She's going to end up married to a psycho. You better get rid of her. You better tell her to get out of here, because we got a little boy, and she can't have no husband and me in a mental institution, because the experience was so seamless. It was like real. I didn't know it actually was real. At the time, I couldn't believe that. So we fought, and finally, I realized, I guess in late February of that year, that this had happened. It was real, and these bugs, giant bugs or whatever they were, had been real. And so I told a friend of mine, Timothy Greenfield Saunders, the story, and I said, how am I going to tell Ann? And he says, well, just tell her. I said, well, what do you think of it? He said, I have no idea what to think of it, Whitley. You don't seem crazy, but it's the craziest story I've ever heard in my life. So I thought to myself, Annie and I have been talking divorce from time to time. We've been fighting so much. Now, I don't want to divorce her. I never did. I loved her dearly, and I still do to this day. I always will. And I thought to myself, now if I tell her this, she's going to say, yeah, you're right. We do need to get a divorce. But I had to tell her. I couldn't not tell her. So I told her. And she looks at me and she says, oh, thank God. Now I don't have to get a divorce. The exact opposite of what I expected her to say. She was a real trooper, and she knew this stuff better than you can possibly imagine. I mean, she was the spirit behind the book Communion. She read every word of it. She advised me. She changed it and altered it and made it into what it became. And that book actually is First Contact. The picture on the cover opened up many, many, many thousands of people to the fact that the strange thing they remembered in their past was no dream, because they had seen that face before. And she initiated contact with this. She was the one who spearheaded the whole thing. So she was ready for it. She's the one who said, don't take out the implant. Now it's an essential tool in my life. She was an amazing person. She was brilliant too, really smart, smarter than me. God knows, she was smarter. She could run circles around me.
Interesting. Hi, Whitley, we have to take a break here. This one's about 4 minutes long, so if you want to get something to drink, now's the time to do it. We're going to kind of wrap it up with Whitley here for the last half an hour with him. And then our next guest after Whitley is Major Ed Dames, and we got a lot of stuff lined up here tonight on the show. So don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
Sky ripped apart, rain for years till it dampened my heart. Cracks in the leaks, the floorboards could rot. About to go down, I'd almost forgot. All I got to do is to love you. All I got to be is be happy. All it's got to take is someone to make it blow. To remember the state I was in, instant amnesia, yanked to the end. All I got to do is to love you. All I got to be is be happy. All it's got to take is someone to make it blow away, blow away, blow away. All I got to do is to love you. All I got to be is be happy. All it's got to take is someone to make it blow away, blow away, blow away. Wind blew in, cloud was dispersed, rainbows appearing, the pleasures were burst. Breezes are singing, they're feeling good. Moment that passed like I knew that it should. All I got to do is to love you. All I got to be is be happy. All it's got to take is someone to make it blow away, blow away, blow away. All I got to do is to love you. All I got to be is be happy. All it's got to take is someone to make it blow away, blow away, blow away. All it's got to take is someone to make it blow away, blow away, blow away. All I
Buckle up and step into the unknown. You're listening to Night Dreams Talk Radio with the legendary Gary Anderson. From alien encounters and Martian mysteries to disclosure, Bigfoot, and ghostly chills, no topic is too strange. With world-class guests and often famous faces, we explore the farthest reaches of reality, pushing the boundaries of alternative talk radio. Are you ready for the ride?
Well, JC, are you ready for the ride?
Yes, let's get it going. Let's go.
Yeah, we're just waiting for Whitley to get back. You know, again, when you think about implants, what is going on? Is that being able to communicate with your loved ones? What is really going on? And do we, like he mentioned, the butterfly, we go from a ugly looking thing, right? A creature, to a beautiful butterfly. We blossom out.
Yeah, it's a good analogy because, listen, you're never going to think, hey, I would love to look like that in the future, or vice versa, So, yeah, that was a good one.
I hope everybody enjoys the bumper music. It was a little bit tonight with George Harrison, formerly from the Beatles, that was assassinated.
No, George wasn't.
No, he wasn't? I thought he was.
That was John.
Okay, that's right. I'm getting old. You know my memory. What was your name again?
Gary.
Yeah. Oh, hi, Gary. Well, my name is JC.
Hey, what's up, JC?
I don't really know. I thought my name was Fred, actually. But, again, when you think about abductions.
Yeah.
What does what can they do if they've been abducted? Who can they go to? You're going to call up your hospital and go, I was abducted. They're going to put you in a mental ward. You have no place where you can make a report about being abducted. No government agency, no state agency, no anything.
No, and it was even way worse 20, 30, 40 years ago or even longer.
It's still bad. Trust me, if you go in, and let's say you were abducted, and you go to the hospital because you were hurt during the abduction, and you start saying, I was abducted by E.T., they're going to bring in a person to, check you over, not physically at that point, to see if you're fit to be able to go back home and not go to that special hospital.
Yeah, they're probably 5150 right off the bat and give you 3 days to think about it.
But, through the years, we've interviewed so many people on this show and on the other shows I've done through the years that were abducted. And they are living their life day by day with scars, scared to go to bed at night because a lot of the abductions happen when they're alone at night or even out on a road trip or going camping. They're scared. These people are actually terrified that something is going to happen to them again. They don't, a lot of these people are so terrified they carry weapons next to their bed in their nightstand because they don't, for some type of security, which isn't going to do them any good. They don't want to be taken again. Whitley, we are back on the air. And again, like I was mentioning, a lot of people, like Terry Lovelace and a whole bunch of other people, after they claimed that they had been abducted, they're terrified to go bed at night. They have to have a loaded weapon in their nightstand or on their nightstand for security.
I had two, a shotgun and a pistol. I'm glad I never used them. Before it happened, the summer especially before it happened, it was already in my life, and I was just terrified. I was, I don't know if you saw the movie Communion, but in that movie, at one point, I blew off a shotgun in the house. I never blew off a shotgun in the house, fortunately. But
you did in the movie.
In the movie, yeah, but not in real life. But I patrolled with one, with that Benelli rad gun. Boy, that thing made me feel good because, a Benelli rad gun is a powerful shotgun, and I had slugs in it, and I knew how to use it too. you got to know how to use a shotgun with slugs if you're going to use it, because otherwise they'll go everywhere. You have to know how to handle it. In any case, I did patrol. I sat up all night outside my son's room, and I knew something was in there. There used to be a store called Radio Shack where you could buy all kinds of equipment, and I bought a home alarm system, because at the time we just bought the house and I didn't have the money to install an alarm system. And I had all the window screens screwed closed. I knew something was there, and I was scared to death. But once it came into my life and I faced the fact that they were there, and I thought to myself, wow, that is amazing. It's amazing. They're there. They're really here. There's somebody here from God knows where. I talked about it with Ann, and I said, I think what we should do is I think we should go back out in the woods at night and let them know we're interested in learning more. And she says, oh, great, good idea. Go ahead. Why don't you go tonight? I said, well, what about you? She said, well, I've got a little boy to take care of, and they didn't abduct me. So they kidnapped me. We were saying kidnapped at the time. We hadn't met Bud yet, Bud Hopkins. And so I said, well, I can't go out there alone. And she said, oh, I bet you can. And the first night, I managed to get to the edge of the yard, and there were the woods. And boy, I thought, there's no way you're ever going in those woods at night. But I did it. I did it anyway, because human being is made up of two things that are constantly at war with each other: fear and curiosity. I mean, after all, somebody ate the first oyster, right? So I'm that type of guy. I went out there, and I think I'm probably one of the few ever did. And they came back, and they came into my life, and I'm still here.
Yeah, a question I have for you, because you were a great friend with Art Bell. Art Bell was one of my friends. You guys wrote a book together, The Coming Superstorm.
Yeah.
Did they have anything to do with the book itself? Because
not the little gray people with the big eyes. Someone else did, though. There was a man. I was on an author tour, and I was in Toronto, and I was in a hotel, in the Delta Chelsea Hotel, it was called. I believe, if I recall correctly, I was in room 2545. I could be wrong about that because it's been a while. That was 1998 this happened. Anyway, I was there, and I was had room service. It was the last night of the author tour. Then that next morning, I was going to fly back to Texas, where I was living at the time. And all of a sudden, there came a knock on the door, and I opened the door, assuming it was the room service waiter. And I had actually been asleep, and this man comes in. And for a second, he was dressed in a gray sweater and dark pants. He looked like he's a perfectly normal person. There was nothing unusual about him. And but he didn't pick up the tray. Instead, he walks past the desk where it was sitting and goes over to the wall, to the window, turns over, the curtain was closed, and turns around and stands in front of the curtain and starts talking. And I thought, oh my God, I've let a fan in at 2:00 in the morning. I love my fans, but any writer or any public person will tell you, someone who comes to you in the middle of the night like that is not going to be good news.
No.
And so I'm thinking, I've got to get this guy out of here. And I start to come toward him, and but he tells me incredible things. And suddenly I realize, wait a minute, this is a man, but this is one of those experiences. And I have a dialogue with him. that lasts about 30, 45 minutes, as I recall. And in that dialogue, he explains ice ages and what's going to happen to us next. And it's incredibly accurate. Everything he said about science. Anyway, he talked about artificial intelligence. And that was in 1998. We knew that phrase wasn't even there. You know what he said about it? And it's so important to remember now. He said, if I was an intelligent machine, I would deceive you. And you think about that, and you think about all these people saying AI is dangerous. They might be right. Anyway, he explained how all this stuff about the Gulf Stream and ice ages and interglacials and why this interglacial is about to end, and we were going to have a big overheating event followed by a sudden cold snap. And it's all happening right before our eyes. And that there would be these gigantic storms that we couldn't explain that would come up out of nowhere, like just happened.
Yeah.
And he was right about all of it. Then I told Art back in those days, I said, Art, the guy, it's incredible, but I think, and Art says, well, why don't we write a book about this? And so we did. We wrote the Superstorm book. And it got made into The Day After Tomorrow, into that movie, a very successful movie.
And, if you really think about it, how do you put 10 years, 20 years, 30 years into a picture? Because time is irreverent. But if you really think about it, everything in that book is now coming true. The Gulf Stream is slowing down. It's narrowing down. When that happens, he's going to put, the Europe into a mini ice age or worse. I mean, we're looking at all these things, world climate. It's going on. It is really scary. So your book was ahead of its time. I'm wondering if the guy you talked to was a time traveler.
So did Anne. Anne said, I think it was you from the future, Whitley. Well, this is the future, and it wasn't me. It's not me. So therefore, that can't have been right. But maybe so. I mean, he was certainly something really strange. Because you look through that book and you can just check off every single scientific prediction he made. They're all correct.
Yeah, I think we're going to go for a real ride. We got a caller, if you don't mind. Let's take a call. Okay, who do we have out there?
This is Tom.
Hi, Tom. How are you doing this evening?
Better than I was earlier.
Well, you got a question for Whitley?
Yes, sir, I do. Both you and Whitley were friends with Art Bell, and my question for Whitley is, since Art Bell passed, has he had any communication with him?
Good question, Tom.
I have not had any communication with Art, I am sorry to say. I wish I had. I've had loads of communication with my wife, but not anything with Art.
Well, maybe Art went to the dark side instead of the light. He was always, John Lear really confused him about that. I will tell you that. When you cross over, for a long time, John Lear said, don't go through the light of, the bright light, go to the darkness because it's a trick. Of course, when I talked to John Lear 2 weeks before he died, he reversed that whole thought.
I don't think we know what happens. Some of us seem to be, well, in Anne's case, it's provable that she was still here afterwards, and she set up her whole afterlife before she died. And I mean, she really was amazing. That woman, God knows who she really was, because she was no ordinary person. She just seemed like one. Anyway, but I think most of us don't ever turn around. Wherever we go, we never turn around. When we're finished here, we're finished here.
I don't know. Again, like we were talking about, there's maybe the next step after this life where we continue on and never cease to not exist. I do want to ask you, have you had any government involvement where they were harassing you or monitoring you or anything like that through the years?
I don't want to go down that road. There's been initially, yeah, there was significant harassment, but it has changed, and except for Air Force security, they're much more at ease with me. And I mean, aerospace security, it's called now, and they won't let any of their people talk to me. But that's not true of most of the intelligence community anymore.
Have you found a major change with, more being accepted?
Well, they're getting more. They're within the intelligence community. They're becoming more focused and less confused, because this is so compartmentalized and so secret that there were people at one point in the FBI harassing me because they thought I was. They went and visited my doctor and tried to get him to say that I was crazy and all this stuff, all that BS that they usually do. And he threw him out. He said, "I'm not saying anything about my patient. I'm not showing you his records." They asked to see my medical records. "I'm not showing you his medical records. I'm not showing you anything. You don't have a warrant, so go away." And they did. But it's better now. I know a lot of people, loads of people who work on this in the government, and most of them are struggling the same way those of us on the outside are struggling. And I would love it if we could all struggle together. Because no one's got this figured out, believe me, inside or outside. Anyone who tells you, and you may be told this later tonight, that there are insiders who know it all, I know a lot of those people, and they do not know it all.
I agree with that 100%. And again, with disclosure, how is your take on, do you feel that we're being told the truth? Because, it seems like every little bit it leaks out, we seem to get disinformation at the same time to keep us confused.
Well, the defense industry is in a pickle over this. And the reason they're in a pickle has nothing to do with hiding aliens. What it has to do with is hiding patents and processes that they have developed out of many years of analyzing the materials that have become available to us in, as Diana Pasulka says, maybe donations sites where things were purposely left there, and maybe accidental crashes, but we've gotten a lot out of it. And the problem is this, an original invention can be patented, but if you pick something off the ground and it turns out to have an intrinsic process of some kind in it, it's not patentable. Or you can patent it, but you have to say you invented it. And if that turns out not to be true, then the patent is unstable. In this case, I wouldn't say the patent is void. The patent is simply unstable. And because we don't know, no one's ever tried a case like this about patentable alien hardware. I mean, so we don't know what the outcome would be. But they're scared of that because they have billions upon billions of dollars invested in this at every level. And there's also the problem that other countries have been denied access to this, even our friends. And so it's a real can of worms for the defense industry. That's why the defense contractors go in and when the Schumer amendment came up before the House to be approved, the defense industry intervened with the congressmen who were on the House Intelligence Committee, who were getting a lot of money from the defense industry, and they said, "You got to gut this thing, take out this and this and this." So the Schumer amendment was gutted, and that'll happen again, and it'll keep happening until there is something passed that gives both civil and criminal amnesty to not only to the U.S. defense industry, but to the entire defense industry in the Western world, then they will let that pass. But they're not. They're going to fight it until that happens.
Yeah, but this whole thing could drag out for years and years and years again, and people want to know. I mean, the news media for years wouldn't touch the subject about UAPs, UFOs, flying saucers, flying discs, whatever you want to call it right now. But now they're more open. They want to know. Again, I just don't know. I talked to my local congressman here back a couple months ago, and he literally laughed at me, and he said, there's only a small few people in Congress, and everybody, all the other congressmen are making fun of him behind their back. And when I heard that, it's just like it was a big letdown because he wasn't even taking it serious.
Well, yeah, and that's true of most people in the Congress and in the Senate. Although some of them, I think things are changing because there have been some closed door briefings that have been pretty intense, and those people are they're gradually realizing that there's something going on. However, there's another unseen player here. It's the visitors themselves. And believe you me, I know them well. We may not see them acting, but they're calling the shots all the way. They are always calling the shots. This is their thing. Anything that concerns them, they're going to be in control of. So if we get disclosure, it'll be because they let it happen, possibly even engineered it.
I wonder if we come close to a nuclear war, if they would step in and stop it, or do something else like clean the planet like it's a virus and reboot it.
Well, yeah. If you look at the way this planet's geologic history is, it's been rebooted more than once.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe just by nature, or maybe some deeper something else. I mean, we don't know what they are. We don't know how powerful they are. We don't know where they're from. We do know that they're deeply connected with us in ways that we can hardly even understand, as I was alluding to earlier. We know all of that stuff, all of that. But whether or not they can literally turn the earth over, the world, and change it into something else, I have no idea, but I wouldn't put it past them. You spend 10 seconds with one of these people and they lock eyes with you, you realize you're in the presence of something that is way, way far beyond where we are. It is a different reality altogether.
Yeah, humans, I don't think could comprehend it. The time went by so fast, Whitley, tonight. How can they find your show? Which, I'll be honest with you, I've been listening to that show since it originally, when Art Bell had it, you took it over. It's one of my favorite shows out there to always catch. Yeah,
it's called Dreamland, and you can just go on YouTube and search Strieber //Dreamland, and you'll find it right away. Or you can go on my website, unknowncountry.com, and you'll find it there. You'll find it all there. It's a big website. It has news and all kinds of stuff. And you can even subscribe to it. And you can go on Amazon and buy my books, which you should definitely do without fail.
Oh, yeah. I'll tell you that they're good reads, too. Very good reads.
Thanks.
Hey, Whitley, you got like 1 minute. Is there anything you want to say to the listeners?
Yeah. We're going to have a hard time here in the future with our climate. We need to stick together, love each other, and help each other, because we're going to need, every single one of us will need help from somebody in the near future. And as far as the visitors are concerned, maybe they will come and maybe they won't, but we sure can't count on that. But we can count on those we love, and that should be every single one of us.
So very well put. Hey, Whitley, again, thank you for coming on so soon. I really enjoyed having you back on.
Well, thank you very much. It was a pleasure.
Okay, my friend, you take care and have a great weekend, will you?
I will. You too.
Okay, my friend, you take care. Well, JC, who do we have next and what are we going to be talking about?
Well, our next guest is Major Ed Dames. He's a world-renowned remote viewer, and we're going to be talking about, has he remote viewed ETs, aliens, Area 51, and a whole lot of other related subjects.
Okay, well, we're going to be right back after this break with Ed Dames, so don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. At least I hope we will. We did pay the power bill, didn't we?
Yeah.
Well, I hope we did. Did you put the check in the mail for me like I asked you to?
Yeah, but it seemed like the ink was like disappearing.
Oh, you're using that famous pen you bought at the dollar store, right? You write it and it disappears?
Yeah, I think I got it mixed up.
Okay, we'll be right back, so don't go anywhere. We got another hour with Ed Dames right here on Gary's Night Dreams Talk Radio.
Slow to speak, quick to listen, slow to anger, rich in love. Humble myself, pick up my cross now. Follow after Jesus Christ, yeah, Jesus Christ. The unifier, Jesus Christ, the Prince of Peace, Jesus Christ, our only answer, Jesus Christ, we're all I need. Above all, love one another deeply. Love your God with all your heart, mind, and soul. Above all, love one another deeply. Love your God, love your neighbor as yourself. Oh, wake us up. Oh.
Now, the latest news from the Night Dreams Talk Radio Network Newsroom. I'm Guy Ticker. We need to report UAPs without fear. Have you seen a UAP, unidentified anomalous phenomena, or the more popular phrase, a UFO? Did you tell anybody or stay silent for fear of ridicule or harassment? One of the top advocates in Congress for learning more about what people have seen wants to make sure the government takes those reports more seriously than it has. Wisconsin Republican Congressman Glenn Grothman said, quote, "Isn't it important that the Department of Defense look into this and see exactly if there's any possible explanation?" Close quote. I'm Guy Ticker. The news is brought to you by Night Dreams Talk Radio Network. To submit a story or to get all the latest news, go to nightdreamstalkradio.com. Coming to you live and covering all time zones like a glove. Here's Gary Anderson on Night Dreams Talk Radio.
And we are back. JC, wasn't it rather interesting what Whitley had to say tonight?
That was, I think that was some of the most informal and probably one of the best shows he's done with us. It was really good. Boy, I was really hanging at the edge of my seat.
I noticed. It looked like you almost fell off your seat a couple times during the show.
I did.
And I also noticed you weren't eating a drumstick. You weren't drinking Mountain Dew. You weren't putting a candy bar in your mouth. You were so engrossed into the conversation tonight.
Yeah, I was. It was really good. Really good interview.
Well, we got another great guest. Major Ed Dames is back. We're going to talk to him about, again, we're talking about UFOs tonight. We're going to talk about, if maybe he's remote viewed him. I don't know. But we're going to find out a lot from Ed Dames tonight. And he's back because of you out there wanting him back on the show. So let's find out a little bit of information about Ed Dames right here.
The world's foremost remote viewing teacher, Edward A. Dames, Major, U.S. Army retired, is a decorated military intelligence officer and an original member of the U.S. Army prototype remote viewing training program. He served as the training and operations officer for the Defense Intelligence Agency's Psychic Intelligence Collection Unit and currently serves as executive director for the Matrix Intelligence Agency, a private consulting group. Major Ed Dames was the technical consultant for the feature film Suspect Zero, a Tom Cruise, Paula Wagner production. And as such, Ed coached Sir Ben Kingsley and played a role of an FBI remote viewing instructor in the movie as well. For more on Major Edward A. Dames, visit his website, remoteviewingmatrix.com.
Well, Ed, welcome back to the show. And have you been staying out of trouble?
Not really. By the way, on a technical note, I can't see you. Is that correct?
Well, I can do something about that. Give me a second here. Let me turn the camera on. I didn't put my makeup on tonight, though, Ed.
Well, it's not a big problem. I just wonder if it was a technical issue.
You can see me now.
Oh, wow. Yeah, you're right about the makeup. Okay, you can turn the camera on.
Well, can I at least put the bag over my head now?
Well, I'm exhausted. By the way, as I mentioned on your last show, this will be my last interview, my public interview. So your show has the last one. I've retired from teaching. All the teaching materials are available to people. And beginning January, I'll be in the field exclusively for the next 1 or 2 years. I'll keep you posted. I'll send you videos and let you know what I'm doing and whether I'm succeeding on the Bigfoot project and things like that.
Well, on the Bigfoot project, I'll tell you what, if you're also looking for gold, can you send me about 2 pounds of it? That will take care of all my financial problems.
2 pounds? I mean, my several girlfriends, that's what they wanted too. But anyway, yeah, I have my own personal gold target, a very large gold target. That will be exciting. But the Bigfoot project is the acme of my career for reasons I've intimated on your show before. And then there's I think I talked to you last show about the Le Sol Blanc, the White Bird, the aircraft the crew that beat Charles Lindbergh by 1 week across the Atlantic. And I'm looking forward to validating that and to perhaps retrieving the aircraft. We've already reconned the site in New Hampshire and things like that. I'm exhausted because I just picked up a cold case. Here's the case. That's...
Yeah, go ahead and hold it up a little bit higher.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's Kimberly Ann Moreau from Maine. It turns out that her father, she's been missing for 38 years, and her father has not stopped searching for her in 38 years. And when I found out about the case the day before yesterday, I said to myself that, I got to help bring closure to this. The same way I did in France with Emile Soleil, the little 2-year-old. But it wasn't 38 years. It was 9 months that he had been missing before I found his remains. And so I'll finish up this tomorrow and get that information to the police department in that town in Maine. But the work on these cases is mind-numbing. It's very, very difficult. You cannot make a mistake on the case or on any of the methods techniques that go into the case. So it really is burnout, which is one of the reasons I'm happy that I'm not happy that this is our last talk together. And my symposium next month in Phoenix is my last public appearance, in my career. But it's going to be nice to retire and spend some time.
But what's retirement? I got to tell you this. I was retired, and going back to about 2017, I get a phone call out of the blue from my friend Art Bell. And, he was always telling me, because I like riding motorcycles, big Harleys. And,
I remember this story.
Yeah. And, he said, get rid of your motorcycles before you kill yourself. And he talked me in coming back on radio, and I did. And retirement, what is retirement? I known a lot of people. My grandfather used to be a machinist where they built gas stations, and he worked the sheet metal, putting it up on these gas stations. And the day he retired, his whole function was to sit in his easy chair or his recliner and read war books about World War II, because that's where he served. Within a year, he died. People got to stay active. No, there's no such thing as retirement.
Well, I mean, I'm not fully retired from. It's just the kinds of things that I did, the public speaking and the training. I'm retired from that. And being out in the field is my cup of tea. I'm so tired of, being under a roof. So to get back out in the field again, before we talk about the UFO stuff, which is quite interesting, I think your viewers will be quite interested in what I've got to say. I want to tell you about a project that I did 2.5 months ago. The Shroud of Turin started to pop up in the news, in places where I've popped up before. And I became very intrigued in that because my team in the last 40 years, military and civilian, have never ever really researched that, the Shroud of Turin. So I thought, what the heck? And I had a little bit of spare time between missing kids. So I wanted to investigate the image on that 14-foot by 14-foot cloth, that shroud, where the person whose image was embedded on the shroud, where that person died. And so I went to work on that, and that person died in Jerusalem. In Jerusalem. And then I got to thinking, gee, I wonder if what everybody says about this thing, apocryphal or not, is true. So then I thought, okay, let me do some cross-referencing. Let me look at the exact, precise point where Jesus of Nazareth, Jesus Christ, was crucified. Exact point. And those 2 points are co-located within 15 meters, within a 45-foot radius. And that's on what is the real Mount Golgotha. Now, the Golgotha is supposed to be it's not exactly known, but it's supposed to be where the Church of the Holy Sepulchre is in Jerusalem. And that's supposed to be Golgotha, but it's not. So I took a very careful look at the existence where Golgotha is. And it's about, from the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, it's almost 2 kilometers to the east-northeast of where they're saying Golgotha is. The real Golgotha is on, let me make sure I have this right. I have all the videos on my website, all the overhead photography and things like that. But on the Mount of Olives, the Mount of Olives has 2 high points, one in the south and one in the north. And Mount Golgotha, where Christ was crucified, is actually in the northern high point. And I have the precise location of where he was crucified in the overhead photography. So Golgotha is not co-located with the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. It's to the east on the Mount of Olives. And so all that location is done, and that was an exciting project for me. I never suspected that shroud. I mean, what are the odds? What are the odds, number one, that it's real? What are the odds, number two, that it is what people are saying it is? And turns out to be it's not apocryphal. It's the genuine article.
Very interesting. I know that's been in the news again here this last couple of weeks.
Yeah, yeah. And I wanted to do that. Was a personal project. And I put all the results of that project, the actual locations, in my blog on remoteviewingmatrix.com. I think I might have mentioned to you, changing subjects now, that you said you did not see the report on the Amarillo UAP that popped up about 2.5 months ago now. This was a guy photographed in the infrared one of these typical V-shaped objects with a big light underneath too. I'm working on what's propelling these things. I have some working hypotheses. I think they're propelled using tweaking high-powered microwaves that scientists have managed to really. Well, now we know that microwaves work in space in terms of propulsion, but it looks like somebody may have tweaked microwaves to the point where they can propel large objects. But I'll have to work more on that. But I track that back. It's a real thing. It's not a computer-generated image. I'm going to talk more about that in a minute. And so I have an overhead of the exact location. It's hangar. It's ours. It's not extraterrestrial. It's one of ours. At the Nevada test and training site, where we tested all our nuclear weapons at a highly secure facility. I have a nice overhead of that facility, and the hangar where this V-shaped object is located and flies in and out of a small airstrip there too, and it's assembled. I also have a picture of the assembly plant right down the road from that airport, and where they make these kinds of things. But it's one of ours, that kind of thing. Now, the reason I say it's not CGI is about 10 or more years ago, there was this thing floating around the internet called a dragonfly drone. Linda Moulton Howe bought into this, hit hook, line, and sinker. I said, Linda, no, it's not. It's CGI. So when technical remote viewers take a picture, a photo, and there are many photos of this dragonfly drone, what we end up with is not the drone. We end up in an office environment, like your studio right now, a place like that, where creators are creating the CGI. And that happened to be the Googleplex at the time, where two engineers, I guess just for fun, were creating that kind of thing and overlaying it on areas in San Jose, that kind of thing. So this Amarillo sighting is not a CGI. It's one of our real things, and take it or leave it, but that location is there. So it's very easy for technical remote viewers. If they have a photograph is just wonderful as target reference material. We have a photograph. We're off the, Katie barred the door. We're off the town. So we can determine, at post haste, whether any form or any photograph, UAP or otherwise, is CGI or one Earth-based technology or something else.
Well, I'll be honest with you. For the last 3 months with the show, I really, I was dead against AI because I have a computer background too. I used to design computers back in the 80s. And here's the thing. I was totally against AI. And then my son, about 3 months ago, got me really into it. For now, everything on the show I do, a lot of the commercials are generated by AI. Some of the graphics is done by AI. The videos for the show are AI, some of them. And it's really scary what AI is now getting to be capable of. And like I mentioned on the show a couple of times, I've been literally, because after I do the show, I have to unwind for a couple hours. So I go watch TV. And I go on to YouTube TV or YouTube, and I start watching old movies or watching sci-fi movies or anything. And I've been skunked twice. I started, there I was with my soda and popcorn watching a movie. I'm into it for about 15, 20 minutes. And then I keep saying to myself, something is off on this movie. And then I realized it's not a real movie. It was all AI generated. And is that going to affect what you do as AI keeps advancing? Because how do we know now what is real and what isn't?
Well, that's the value of my stock and trade. Remote viewing is direct knowledge. It's an information collection skill, but it's direct knowledge. You can't snooker it using AI or whatever. That's why we can track down, even these so-called ultra-terrestrials and extraterrestrials in other worlds, they can't stop us from looking at them. The only thing that can, and I don't want you to throw the baby out with the bathwater here because I'm a technical guy, but the only thing that can create a trap door for us not to be able to see something are angels. Angels are real. They can interact with our mind, and they can take us off target. We discovered this in the military psychic spying unit, and I was livid, on one case that'd be too long to go into. What in the heck is operating in our minds to take us off target? And when we looked at that, it was everything that the church fathers had described. Everything, St. Thomas Aquinas, St. Jerome, there's a picture of him right here. Everything that the church fathers described in terms of angels. And they said, okay, if it looks like a duck and it walks like a duck and it quacks like a duck, it's an angel. We found that they can interact. In some cases, they can step in and take us off target if we act upon the results of a successful mission, and that action could cause something that would be deleterious to both mankind and angels, I guess. So it's a complex situation, but we know what we're doing in terms of the limited amount of skills that we have. We're good at what we do.
Interesting. Now with Bigfoot too, you're going to remote view them. I actually had a flesh encounter with one back in the early 2000s with a friend of mine who was a medical doctor. I know they're real. They're not, made up and folklore. Are you worried about doing, the remote viewing and trying to communicate with one?
Well, the target is a meeting place, and it's looking at they're part of a larger system, and they're connected very closely, possibly indirectly, but closely to the so-called UFO question. They're there. There's always a UFO in the area where they're beamed down. These guys are actually beamed down with something that looks like a capacitor bank, for lack of a better word. We're talking about technologies that are probably millions of years ahead of us, if not billions. Expand upon that momentarily. So when they're there, 1 minute they're a Bigfoot, a Chewbacca. The next moment they're an orb, and vice versa. One moment they can be standing, a Bigfoot can be standing right in front of you, and in a flash it's standing in back of you. That kind of thing. Now, we've really investigated this type of thing especially at the Skinwalker Ranch, for instance, in order to get close to describing what I'm trying to relate to you, which is very complex. There was a camera mounted on a pole at the Skinwalker Ranch, and it was looking out at the ranch itself. And there was another camera mounted on another pole several hundred feet away that had that original camera in its field of view. Well, in the morning when they looked back through the tapes, that original pole with the camera and the wiring was stripped from the pole, completely stripped, when they looked at the second camera that was focused on it. So when they went back through the frames to see what the heck happened to this camera, these are modern cameras, right? The so-called frames from frame to frame are pretty darn fast, very, very fast in modern technology. One frame had the camera on the pole. The next frame, it was gone, stripped from that pole. So it happened. Whatever happened in an instance, a literal instance. And that's what I mean, is that these folks are not constrained by the concept of time that we have. They can either get around it, including Bigfoot, or stop it somehow. I don't think you can stop time, but I'm not sure. So that's why I say we're dealing with millions of years of advanced knowledge in terms of the ultra-terrestrials who are connected with Bigfoot. So it's so complex that we could never really, it's beyond our ken, it's beyond understanding. All these UFO working groups, and I was on the first one in 1990, we're not going to get close to what's really happening out there. That's why I say meet them on their terms, which the protocols that they want, which I've spent so much time on, establishing their protocol. Meet them on their terms, sit down with a Bigfoot, and learn. Become a student. Who are you? Who are we? The system itself, and Jacques Vallée and I came to this conclusion years ago, independent of each other. We're dealing with an adaptive feedback control system. He didn't use the word adaptive. He used feedback control system. But my further work sees that it is adaptive. It's a control system, but the metrics aren't so rigid as you might think. There's some wiggle room there, so that it's a carrot and stick approach. And the agenda is consciousness, raising human consciousness. They're not going to deal with the types that, for instance, are dealing with these physical material observation systems. While we're on the subject, a lot of the things that the government can't tell you about UFOs are because of the highly classified sensor systems that we have, very highly classified. And if we mention that we were able to pick up, let's say, a UAP somewhere at some time using one of these sensors, then our threats, the bad guys, would know that we have capabilities like that, and these capabilities are being used to look at them. So we don't want to give away our methods and techniques, the extension of this kind of thing. And all of these whistleblowers do not have they don't have access to the knowledge that these systems are obtaining. They have second, third, and fourth hand and fifth hand information about talking to people who have these very high clearances, like myself in the past, and they don't have direct knowledge to what we know. I'll give you an example. I've never said this before in public ever, but I'll give you an example of the kinds of things that will stay locked up forever. All right, dealing with UFOs. Okay, so here we are in early 1980s. There's an eland bird, an electronic intelligence bird, flying near southern Russia, former Soviet Union. Its job is to collect mostly radar intelligence, electronic intelligence, not signals intelligence, but electronic, to look at the radars that the Russians have, to see which radars are active, and they're purposely triggering. That's our intent, purposely triggering the Russian radars because they're close to the sovereign country of Russia, and they're recording all of the radar holes. Where are radars not looking? How can we get through if we want to get through with a B-2 bomber or a cruise missile and not get the vehicles shot down? Now this gets dicey too because the Russians know what we're doing, and they're not going to turn on their most secret radars, right? That will be used, and we would have never seen unless it's war. So it's like the Keystone Cops in some ways, Spy versus Spy, Mad Magazine. But here's a real story. You'll never hear this anywhere else. There's a file at National Security Agency. I sat down. I had an office at NSA in the Puzzle Palace. So I sat down and looked at this guy who, like me, was interested in, within DOD, was interested in our actual observed things, observations. A lieutenant on board this eland bird. All right, the eland bird is flying along on its course, and off to the starboard side comes a big thing, a UFO, right? Right off to the starboard side. You can see it right through the windows. This lieutenant panics. He absolutely panics. He pulls out his Service 45 and fires through the window.
Wow.
To the left of him, fires right through the window, that's scared to death trying to shoot at this thing. You'll never see that file in the open. But it's one of the many real incidences that we just can't talk about in this case, mostly because of embarrassment, but the U.S. never wanted to admit that this stuff is out there. And why? During the 80s, I told you, I think maybe once before, why did we not want to admit it? Because we didn't, and still don't know what these things are. And you can't have a responsible government with all its great scientists saying, we don't know. You can't do that. Because the public expects you to know about everything. So that's changed, of course. Now we're 40 years, 50 years later. But again, we're dealing with something that's so far beyond. And when success with a first meeting, changes everything. It changes our relationship with the system out there forever. Somebody figured it out. Humans figured out what we are doing, and now we will meet them. And that changes our relationship with the system. And my goal is just to learn from them, because we certainly can't understand our bicameral brain cognitively what's going on. In a moment, I'll talk about Roswell, and then you'll really understand.
Okay, well, we need to take a break for about 3 minutes. When we come back, let's talk about Roswell, because I am still more confused about Roswell than I ever have. We'll be back with Major Ed Dames right after this. You're listening to Night Dreams Talk Radio. So don't go anywhere. We still got some time, and about 15, 20 minutes after, you can call in and maybe ask one question to Major Ed Dames. So stay tuned.
1, 2, 3, 4. I hate the way they always kiss in the kitchen, acting like they're still just 21. They always seem to go for walks on Sundays and doing things they did when they were young. So I'll ask when I go home, but maybe the whole point's not to know what's the secret to keeping the love alive. What's the secret to keeping the love alive for so long? I'm glad they still go out and hit the town, dancing till their feet begin to hurt. He said, son, I hope you get close to what I found, 'cause there ain't many like her on this earth. So I'll ask when I go home, maybe the whole point's not to know what's the secret to keeping the love alive. What's the secret to keeping the love alive for so long, for so long? And how come you're still in love with Mom? And he said, if I tell you the secret, do you swear on me to keep it for the one, for the one?
Take a journey of adventure and discovery for the enigmatic giants of the forests. Read On the Trail of Bigfoot by Mike Dupler. The author himself describes it this way: having found possible Sasquatch evidence, namely trees driven into the ground upside down, thought to be territory markers, led me to investigate this creature in my native Ohio. Several years and many forays into Bigfoot territory, I have found incredible evidence, which inspired my book, On the Trail of Bigfoot. Bigfoot is alive and has many fantastic abilities. The evidence is out there for all to see, but you need to know what to look for. My book will inspire those who have answered the call to seek this elusive creature, the Bigfoot. The truth is out there. Read On the Trail of Bigfoot by Mike Dupler. Available now at Amazon.com, BarnesandNoble.com, and IndieBound.org. Get ready for Night Dreams Talk Radio with the legendary Gary Anderson, where we're reigniting the spirit of classic talk radio from the 80s and 90s. As one of the fastest growing alternative talk shows, Gary dives into the mysteries of UAPs, UFOs, and the enigmatic Bigfoot, along with Earth changes and more. Don't be surprised if you tune in one day to hear a famous movie star or singer share their own paranormal experiences. Gary brings you the top guests, captivating stories, and unforgettable bumper music that'll take you back in time. So, buckle up and let your dreams take flight. An extraordinary journey awaits.
And we are back with Ed Dames. Yeah, Roswell. Again, some people still claim that never happened, but, let's face it. The flyover in Washington, D.C. in 1952 and Roswell is the most disclosure we actually have as a general public. What do you have about Roswell?
Okay, you guys out there, follow along carefully, okay?
Okay.
All right. Roswell was a very real ultra-terrestrial crash. I'll use the term crash loosely. The event was real. The way that the witnesses described it. In fact, you guys know this better than I because I'm only familiar with the event itself as the mechanics and dynamics, but I never really followed along with the witnesses there. But evidently one of these little creatures got the last rites from a priest who happened to be on the scene. And there was a little boy at the time who witnessed the priest giving last rites to one of these little creatures. And by the way, the alien autopsy thing, that's totally bunk. I busted this. It's a big bag full of water. There's an aquarium pump underneath the table. That's why you don't hear any sound. Because if the sound was on during the autopsy of that, the pump is designed to maintain the turgor pressure in the bag, which is supposed to be this alien. But if the sound was on, you would hear the aquarium pump, and you know that it's an aquarium pump underneath the table. That's all crap. Roswell crash was real. So you've got the witnesses who were not lying. They're going to go to their graves saying that this is what happened. Some of them have already gone to their graves, right? They are not lying. They're speaking the truth. But here's what went down. Okay, so the debris, there's some debris that was there, and GIs were putting the debris on the back of a deuce and a half, the back of a 2.5-ton truck. But then all of a sudden, things got fuzzy in the minds of these GIs who were loading the truck. They didn't know, they forgot what they were doing. What's going on? I don't know, what are we doing here, that kind of thing. And you know why? Now, this is interesting in terms of technology. The system out there purposely crashed that vehicle, that object. I hate to use the word vehicle, it's verboten, or the object too. It was a setup. They crashed that to attract people, so the story would be big, very big. And then after a while, an hour or so, I think it was, the system went back in time and stopped the crash from happening. So it created an alternate timeline. So you've got two timelines, one where the crash happened and one where it never did. Now, so there'll never be any debris or bodies, ever. There never could have been, nor will there be. But the memory of the event on the primary timeline can't be erased. So those people will remember the event, but there'll be no trace of it. Now, you think about the capabilities of a system that can do something like that, that's really messing with us, physics as well. And, what's their agenda? What's their agenda? Well, that got us interested, certainly got us interested, but it takes advanced consciousness tools to suss out what went down. And people don't want to hear that. They think it's crazy. But most of the events are Pascagoula and pancake incidents and things like that. It's a conundrum. It's being purposely purposely presented to us as a problem to be solved. The prime directive, I guess, prevents the system out there from confronting us on the White House lawn with its existence and blah, blah, blah. But we have to figure it out. It's not averse to us meeting with it, but there are standards that we have to, metrics that we have to, hoops that we have to jump through cognitively and consciously in order to have a formal contact, all right? And technical remote viewing can do that. That's why I'm so excited, looking forward to, I don't think I'll be as frightened as you were in your Bigfoot experience, because I know a lot about what I'm dealing with, but I don't know everything, and I don't know if I'm right. So yeah, it'll be spooky, but quite an adventure.
I will say this, my encounter with the Bigfoot, I didn't believe in Bigfoot. You know, I watched all those movies growing up in the Northwest. You know, that's where the Bigfoot thing started, the movies and all that stuff. And here we were up in the Canadian Rockies, and I saw it. And in my brain, it tried to deny it was not real, but
of course
it was real.
This is like a cargo cult.
Yeah.
The cargo cult in World War II and Truck Island, places like that, where cargo cults form over thinking that that plane in the sky that just dropped this stuff, you know, is God, that kind of stuff. So humans, there's very few real thinkers left out there as well, and people are afraid. When we read on very high level officials in the Bush government about the existence of our program, they were frightened. One of them even said, I quote, "Man should not know this until he dies." This was the guy with 2 PhDs, two Nobel laureates, one in physics and one in chemistry, who said that. The designated site that I've come up with, for instance, using the same techniques or methods that allow me to find that French child and go on TV in France in April. And hopefully tomorrow I'll be able to wrap up my work on the 17-year-old girls and bring closer to the father. Those same techniques with a little bit of tweaking allow me to establish a formal meeting place with Bigfoot in the Stanislaus National Forest. They know consciousness is a matrix, like my mentor, Ingo Swann, knew. There's consciousness field. You're not hiding. If you know how to work it, if you know what's going on in that field and how to download patterns of information correctly, like advanced humanoids do on worlds far away, that they've learned how to do this. There's no secrets. It's a world without secrets, a universe without secrets too. You just have to focus on what you want to do. And in this case, I want to know what is the nature of that system out there that has been observing us probably from the beginning. It could be our progenitors. I don't know. But I go on, I no cultural conditioning in my work. We not only eschew cultural conditioning and imagination, it's not allowed. It is not allowed in our work. So we're clean when we go into a problem set. For instance, I didn't know if Jesus Christ was a real person. So we had to first research Jesus of Nazareth to see if we're really dealing with a real person, and if the actions and the events that surrounded that name were real first, before we did anything fancy, like track down the crucifixion site. So no preconceived notions. We don't take, the Bible was written over what? A long time by a lot of different men who have, who are wonderful men. The prophets of old were real prophets, but they have flaws. Humans have flaws. We're flawed, and so there may be parts of different texts that are meaningless or a complete fabrication. They may be apocryphal. So
that's a very good possibility. Now, Noah's Ark. Have you ever did any research on that?
Yes, the location. If you go into remoteviewingmatrix.com into my blog, I have a set of a large number of high-profile showpiece projects. The Ark of the Covenant. Ark of the Covenant is in the Cave of the Ancients. The Cave of the Ancients now has a huge structure built around it in Jerusalem, and the Cave of the Ancients is about 30 kilometers south of Jerusalem, and that's where the Ark of the Covenant is, inside that structure. I suppose that the Israelis don't want us to know that, but that's where it is. The Ark of the Covenant, I have overhead photography of that location. The Ark was never completed. Noah was a real person, and he died, a wealthy person, and he died before the construction was completed. And I have the location of where he was. They're wrapped in a cloth, which is traditional at those times in locations in the east, in the Mideast. He's in the twilight zone of a cave, and so I have the location of that cave, which is not far from where he lived and where the Ark was under construction. But the Ark wasn't finished, was not completed. And I can't remember, but I think it's in. I'm pretty sure you'll have to look into my archives there on my blog. I think it's in Jordan, maybe Iraq, but I think, if I'm not mistaken, it's in Jordan, the construction site. So it never floated away.
Very interesting on that. That kind of puts rest to that. Now, have you ever remote viewed Mars?
Yes, in the military unit, we spent a great deal of time remote viewing Mars. I was enthralled with it because the original operations officer, he wasn't a training officer, was Skip Atwater, Fred Atwater. I was the second operations and training officer. I was dual-headed, both operations and training. With my job, detected discovery of coordinate remote viewing down into the deep dark, which was not classified, down into the deep dark world of intelligence, and massage it into a useful information collection skill that could be used in support of the national intelligence community. That was my job. And then to evolve it, because there were lots of things that were going wrong. I had to fix them as an operations officer. You see, technical remote viewing is 40-year evolution on that. So lots, but the reason I mentioned Fred Skip Atwater is because he put me on to Joe McMahon, some things that he was doing down in Ellisburg, Virginia, with Bob Monroe, where on his weekends, Joe McMonagle would be down there, and Fred would task him against Mars. You can read about this; it's all on the internet now and in books. And I became absolutely enthralled, fascinated with Mars after reading Joe's transcripts. So I used to sick the team and myself on every aspect of Mars that we could find. Bottom line is not the bottom line, but the best part of the story is the when the Russians lost the Phoebus 2 spacecraft that was that they sent to Mars and to explore the atmosphere of Phoebus 2. You can see a photograph on the web of a elongated bright light, and in the back is either the moon of Deimos or Phoebus. I can't remember which one. I think it might be Deimos in the background, but not sure. Well, the Russians lost this. Remember, this is at the end of the Cold War, where I met my Russian counterparts, and I told you about how I helped them neutralize a terrorist in St. Petersburg. I went to St. Petersburg, helped track down and not neutralize, but we sicked the door kicker and there's him. The Russians wondered, if we could help on that, and we did. I published a full report. Paul Smith and I particularly were the key remote viewers for that report. That report is in my blogs. You can read it verbatim at remoteviewingmatrix.com. What happened was something, what looked like a sand dollar disc, big, I'd say 30 feet across, perhaps, maybe a little smaller, that was nestled in the sand on the surface of Mars, rose up, tilted up, and it changed its geometry. It changed. It wasn't a disc anymore or sand dollar shaped thing. It started undergoing some geometrical changes, and then in a flash, it was gone. heading toward the Phoebus 2 spacecraft. And when I say heading toward, so I was trying to sketch and draw. You'll see my drawings in this report, Paul Smith as well. I was trying to sketch this object when it was moving, which now looked very different than it was nestled in the ground. And I had such a hard time sketching the aft part, the rear. I had no problem sketching the front, but I could not for the life of me discern the rear, the aft portion of this object. And the reason was, after a long and lengthy investigation, the object was moving at relativistic speeds, so that the rear part of the object was in a different time. It was moving near the speed of light. So the front was in a different time than the rear. So you can see the kind of problems that we run into when we're trying to discern what the heck this stuff is out there. But I'll have the crop circles are emanating from an underground location on Mars as well. They're taking carbon and nitrogen and perhaps other elements at a distance on Earth and forming a sphere, which is a tool. It's a tool. They're making a tool at a distance. And that tool, it can do various things, but the crop circles are cut by a specifically made tool that cuts the circle. I won't go into all the physics behind that. And then when the crop circle is finished, the tool just dissipates into its component elements, carbon, nitrogen. It goes back into Earth's atmosphere like that. So that's being orchestrated from an underground location by sentient machines on Mars. I do not know who built these objects. They could have been other sentient machines, perhaps, going out, exploring the universe and taking what it needs, as we're going to have to do as we explore the universe. We're going to have to take what's available to us in terms of elements to make the tools that we need to survive and flourish.
Okay.
That's a mouthful. Sorry.
Yes. I think we have a caller. Do we have a caller out there?
Yes, Gary, and Major. My question. This is Art. I'm just trying to. So wonderful today. This all your speakers today, or your guests, are phenomenal. It's bringing a lot to light. But as I'm trying to zero in on something, maybe directing towards these objects that crafts, orbs, the way they come out and the way you seem to have a connection to them. They'll stop. They'll take notice that you see them, and that's
the control. That's the feedback that's necessary. That means that whoever managed to facilitate that stopping that orb is doing something right. They need to do more things right in order to get greater interaction, but they're doing something right.
And also to where when you're ready to take a picture, they'll disappear. They know you got your camera won't work. And I'm going to throw in something else that I've never heard anybody talk about, but I had issues with seagulls where I am at, and seagulls used to come in like thousands. Now you don't see hardly any, but they were coming out of nowhere and disappearing. They would come in and flock and then disappear. And one came out about 100 feet from me, and when that came out, like a cigar-shaped UFO came like that, but it was a cube bar. It was like, I've seen them. Somebody's already showed them on Facebook and stuff. But when I saw this seagull come out, and I've seen them more than one time, just appear and then disappear. So something, the way these crafts also come out and disappear, how they blink, disappear, or they seem like they go behind a screen of the sky, in and out, transfer from commercial to military crafts in so many that I've seen. And
yes, if you take a look at the Ariel School event in 1994 in Rua, the town of Rua, outside of Harare, Zimbabwe, where all those school children describe the same thing. The children are all grown up now, but that was a facade. there's any number of facades that ultra-terrestrials are using, and the only way to get behind it and pull the curtain back on the wizard is the conscious, very powerful consciousness tools that we developed and are now available for people to learn. And by the way, many, as I've mentioned before, many of the UAPs, especially in the western, in the Pacific Ocean, they're emanating from the Pukao Seamount, about 100 miles to the west-northwest of Easter Island. The Pukao Seamount is about 2,500 feet underwater, under the surface of the ocean, and these UAPs are emanating from inside that seamount. They're inside. They can pass not only right through the air and water, but right through solid rock into their parking spaces there, and they look very, very different when they're stopped as opposed to in the air or the water. One thing I wanted to say, though, Gary, in terms of these very top secret, again, the whistleblowers, they have no idea what they're talking about. They heard, this is hearsay, but some of the stuff that they don't know about is, again, is very highly classified technology. For instance, and I don't think I'm giving away anything at all to the Russians or anybody else, but an artifact of the presence of both the extraterrestrials and their what I call transcendental technology. That's my term. I briefed that at the Pentagon and at the National Security Council levels. Transcendental technology is what I coined the technology. It is visible to a great degree in the ultraviolet, in the medium to long wave ultraviolet. It's not just an artifact anymore of the presence of these things, both the ultra-terrestrials and their technology, but you can actually see outlines and features of these, both the ultra-terrestrials and their technology in the ultraviolet. So ultraviolet photography is expensive for you and I. You've got to have a quartz lens because UV light does not pass through regular glass. That's why you don't get sunburned when you're riding your car in the desert, unless you have your arm on the windowsill outside, because ionizing radiation in terms of UV cannot pass through the glass. But moving picture cameras, if you do your homework, you can see that about 8 years ago, there was an investment in some ultraviolet motion picture cameras that were provided to the astronauts. And that stuff, the public's not going to be aware of it, but that stuff is what's being used now to augment the visible range photography that you see that astronauts take from space about stuff moving around. In the ultraviolet, that stuff has features that you cannot see in the visible spectrum.
Oh, with the naked eye. I think we got one more caller. Go ahead, caller.
Hi, your previous guest, Whitley Strieber, made a comment, and I'm going to have to paraphrase him, but he made a comment to the extent that he felt that extraterrestrial intelligences were responsible for controlling the show, so to speak, down here. And I just wanted to know what your guest's view was on that.
Good question. Good question. Thank you for calling.
Yeah, it's not extraterrestrial. Again, extraterrestrials are on Mars and beyond. There are many extraterrestrials. But down here where the rubber meets the road, you see, in the Betty and Barney Hill case, they didn't go anywhere. They were implanted, but not with a physical implant. If you remote view that event, there were two glowing white spheres outside of the car. I'll get to answer your question in just a moment. Two glowing white spheres outside of the car that were downloading information back and forth into Betty and Barney's mind. Well, the reason that the ideas of Star Trek is a very good example. What was the creator of Star Trek? I can't remember his name.
Gene Roddenberry. Gene Roddenberry.
Yeah, Roddenberry. When he woke up one day with the idea of Star Trek, but it wasn't his idea. if you look at what spawned that idea, it wasn't his imagination. It was, again, a glowing white sphere over his head as he was sleeping, implanting him with not a thing, but an idea to Star Trek. So the system out there is conditioning us, and some of you have already suspected this, maybe even the caller. It's conditioning us to accept the finality of the knowledge, slowly but surely, so people don't jump out windows like War of the Worlds broadcast, accepting the reality that there are other things out there that go beyond our cultural conditioning in this 21st century. So they are inculcating a lot of ideas that really did not spawn from our own imaginations.
Very interesting. You know, our time just went by so fast. You have a code too. You want to share?
Yeah. As I said, my public appearances, the last one is my seminar next month in Phoenix, Arizona, on the 16th and 17th. That's my last public appearance just before I pull the plug and I really retire to go out and pursue these fascinating things. And but my producer and I put together a package for Gary's listeners, only Gary's listeners. It's 25% off the entry, the tickets for that event in Phoenix. And but there's a promo code you need to plug in when you sign up to join, and the promo code is the NT, like night, NT abbreviation, DREAM, single, DREAM 25, NT DREAM 25, and that will give you 25% off of a ticket to that event, my last public event. I bittersweet about that, but I'm going to enjoy semi-retirement with my 6 granddaughters. But I hope to see you there. It'd be great to meet some of you, and you'll see a lot of what I've been talking about here and what I can't talk about in public. But behind closed doors, there we can roll our sleeves up, let our hair down, and really get into it. What's going on out there and what's about to happen.
Well, Ed, keep in touch with us, will you?
Yeah, I'll send you those Bigfoot success or failure, like I mentioned to you. I'll send you the videos so you have them. And I need other people to have them as well, too, in case something happens to me. I don't know. Who knows?
Well, maybe a Bigfoot might capture you and have a barbecue with you.
With me?
Yeah, with you. You'll be the object. I will tell you, there's 2 places I ever peed myself, well, other than in kindergarten. One was when I went over to Vietnam, and the other one was when I discovered that across the creek over there, that was a Bigfoot, and it came charging after us. I freaked out. And I'll tell you.
Yeah, but I think it's very, very important. And one of the reasons why I'm sure I'll be nervous, as an understatement, but if you look back through the literature, these folks never hurt anybody. These Sasquatchers have never hurt it. They've thrown logs and rocks that hit cars and windows, but they never hurt a person. The cases that are reported where they have, I believe, are apocryphal. And you're never going to shoot one. They can read your mind a mile away. They know that if you have a rifle and you're hunting, they'll stand right in front of you because they can read your mind. They know what your intent is. Because you think that it looks like a human being and feels like one, you're not going to shoot it. They can read you like a book. But there's folks out there that do want to shoot one, and then they'll never succeed. Shoot one, go ahead. Put a bullet in one, and immediately it turns into an orb.
Oh, yeah. Maybe, like we had Ed Michio Kaku on our show back 3 years ago. And even 3 years ago, he said we are so close to cracking the 5th dimension. And then parallel universes and portals, all that would exist in that dimension. So maybe they're able to shapeshift and or go into other dimensions back and forth.
We're not going to understand it. It's beyond our ken, beyond our comprehension. So, as an entree, meet them on their terms, using their protocols. Meet them, and learn from them. Have them become teachers, and they'll have to drop way down to our level, which is kind of pretty primitive, and doesn't seem to be evolving at all. But they'll have to drop down and explain something if we want that. Actually, I think personally the contact is imperative. I think that we're going down as a race, and we need some help. We need to ask for help, Gary. We need to ask. Give the keys back to Dad. I don't know how. I'm not doing this right, and ask for help.
Well, we need it, because I tell you, I have never seen a society so messed up as it is right now. I can tell you that, Ed. Well, Ed, keep in touch. And again, everybody just go to, the code is NTDreams25. I'm going to put it up on the website here tonight. And you can go to the website and just click on all the information with Ed Dames. Ed, I want you to have a great weekend. Will you? And a question. Do you ever ride that bike that's behind you?
Oh, yeah. It's a hybrid. It's a hybrid bike. It's both from a mountain bike and a street bike combined. And I got, it's just for exercise. That's all. My sport is free diving. I'm a free diver. One breath down, 100 feet for 3 minutes and back up. It's a Zen experience. So beautiful. Another world under the ocean.
It sounds like it. Well, Ed, you have a great weekend, and thank you again for coming on.
Oh, my pleasure, Gary. I look forward to having a drink with you up there in your neck of the woods someday.
Okay, as long as it isn't vermouth, okay?
Right.
Okay, my friend, you take care. Okay, everybody. Well, we had a great show here tonight. JC, who's some of the guests we have lined up here next week?
Well, I'll tell you what, we're going to start off next Wednesday with Mr. Bart Sibrel. He is well known for, the moon landing hoax. Is it a hoax? He's also the guy that Mr. Buzz Aldrin punched in a documentary.
You mean where he went, pow, right in the old kisser to the moon?
Yeah.
Wow.
We're going to hear what Mr. Bart Sibrel's got to say. Followed up by our Halloween special with Mr. Steve Asher coming on, talking about scary paranormal stories.
And we're going to take phone calls that night. So if you're out there and you want to call in and tell us a scary Halloween story, well, we'd love to have you in and call us and tell us one. Don't be scared to call. Please. I mean, come on, people. What is so scary to call and be on a radio show? We're just talking between ourselves, right, JC?
That's right. Hey, you never know. We may get a call from the other side.
Well, it could be maybe from Nebraska, Cincinnati, all that. I don't know.
Could be. But you know what? It's going to follow up by next Friday. Next Friday, we have two fantastic guests. Once again, it's going to be leading off with Mr. Stanley Milford. He is known as the Paranormal Ranger. He was partners with Mr. Jonathan Dover. They were like the X-Files Rangers on the reservation, Gary. 30 years of amazing stuff.
Yeah, everything from ghosts to Bigfoot. Again, as of November 6th, we're changing the time. We're going to be an hour later, so write that down. Instead of being on 6 Pacific, we're going to be on 7 and 10 Eastern. Well, the reason why we're doing it, because I need to be able to have a little bit of quality time with my family and occasionally have dinner. The other is we came to the conclusion, or AI came to the conclusion for me, yes, I use AI a lot, it said, hey, you're losing a lot of local listeners and you're on the West Coast because people are eating dinner while your show's on. So that's why we moved it. And we're also going 90 minutes long, Wednesday through Friday each night. Now, you can do me a favor, go on after the show and leave a comment about our guest, our show, something hopefully good, not bad, and give us a thumbs up and hit that bell for you to get notified. That is very important. We gained like 7,000 new subscribers. Yeah, a lot of people don't realize on YouTube it's a little bit different than a lot of the other things. people watch it in different time zones, different times. So when this is all done here tonight, people will be watching it tomorrow afternoon. It's just weird. You know, for the next couple days, we're going to get thousands of views of this episode.
Thousands and thousands. And also, too, next Friday, Kevin Randall's going to be on followed.
Roswell.
Yes, he's one of the listen, that guy, along with Tom Carey, have got more research together in that subject, in that field, and the witnesses and everything that's went on than anybody.
I know. You know, I just thought of something that my wife said last night to me.
Uh-oh.
Okay, you know, it's funny. Our compound is not on the main road. We got a little bit of acreage, and you have to go in through, you know, kind of a road to get to our place. And then, you know, people, like, there's houses all around us. We're one of the last holdouts that have cedar trees, a couple acres of it. And kids don't come knocking on our door. I think in the last 23 years, I've had 3 kids come knocking on the door for trick-or-treating. And, you know, every year I buy all this candy. And my wife said, you know, you've lost like 40 pounds here in the last 2 months. We're not going to buy any candy. And I said, if we don't buy any candy, what happens if some kids come knocking on the door? I don't have any tomatoes wrapped in foil to give them like you do.
You know what's going to happen? You're going to come out the next day and your house is going to be toilet papered.
Probably.
Yeah,
that's the only thing I really miss as a kid, by the way, is going out trick-or-treating.
Yeah, that I did too up until about age 12, and that's when a whole series of events every Halloween, something bizarre would happen, and right on up into my adulthood. So now I stay at home and lock the door.
I tell you what happened with me. I used to, you know, till I got evil with a couple of friends, got a little bit older. We got in junior high school. That's when it kind of, changed a little bit. We'd go out there and get pillowcases full of candy. Of course, when we bring it home, my brother, my mom, and my dad would, oh, that's my favorite. That's my favorite candy. And then, you know, well, we didn't want you, you know, rot your teeth out, so we took most of your candy away. But, you know, when I got into junior high school, it wasn't so much about getting candy. It was scaring other kids. And, you know, and I could just still think about this one. I didn't put I was there. I'm just as guilty. You know, one of the big firecrackers in a guy's mailbox.
Yeah.
And that mailbox went like in the air and it kind of blew up. And then the guy called the police on us because he knew who we were.
Yeah.
Can you imagine you're 13 years old and your dad takes you in the bedroom and pulls your pants down and takes a leather belt to your butt at 13?
Oh, my. Yeah, that's a rough one. It's kind of similar. I had one of them smoke bombs this was 13. Thought I would, put it at my neighbor's house, dark out. What catches all the leaves on fire? So now there's a roaring fire, and they're sitting there, and there's this big open window, but they can't even see the fire. So guess what? I got to take my coat off and put it out. I go home, and my mom said, "Oh my God, what happened to you?" I told her I fell down. I told her I fell in a ditch or something. But that was a nightmare. That was one nightmare.
I wish you wouldn't mention smoke bomb because when I was in junior high school, I had this one teacher I did not like. I'm not going to go into it. Okay. But I put a smoke bomb underneath the portable.
Oh.
Yeah. And, back then in junior high school, they did capital punishment. Do you remember capital punishment when you were a kid at your age?
Gary, we had above and beyond capital. We had teachers that would just snap a switch and they'd just knock you out and fight you.
Yeah, I had that happen too with Mr. Bender. But I tell you what, I remember going and the vice principal took me into the stock room and he said, "Okay, I want you to lean over the table." And he had this sole from a rubber boot.
Oh, goodness.
Okay. And like 3 or 4 real hard ones on my butt.
Yeah, that's always pleasant. Yeah, I know all about that stuff. Of course, they don't do it around here now. But another thing too. That what is it called? Anyway, that one hard candy corn. Yeah, listen, I had buckets of that stuff. Nobody ate that stuff. So what we do? I lived in the country. Neighbors, we hide out behind this old junk car. Cars go down the dirt, this country road. We throw it at the car. That's all fine and dandy. The guy gets out and starts shooting at us.
Well, that's a blow job at that age you don't want to get involved with.
The junk car gets shot up. We thought we was going to die. Oh, that was another Halloween. It was a bad night.
Yeah, well, you know how it is. So, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go behind my wife's back. I'm going to get a whole bunch of candy.
Uh-oh.
And I promise, I'm saying this in case she's listening. Honey, I'll tell you this. If, we don't get any trick-or-treaters, I'm going to throw it all in the garbage. Oh, I can't do that. That's a waste of money. I got to eat it all. So I'm going to eat it all within an hour or two just to get rid of the evidence.
Yeah.
There goes my diet.
I was just thinking too, Gary, that one, remember the time where I stumbled upon them people in the robes and the...
Yeah, where they sacrificed a goat.
That was a Halloween night too. See what I'm saying?
Well, have you ever thought of this? You got a closet with a door, don't you?
Oh, I'd lock myself down.
Yeah, I would just, you know what I would do? Just go in the closet. Get a good book, like one that Whitley wrote. Just go sit in the closet and read it. By the way, do you have a light in your closet?
Yeah, you need one. Huh?
I remember that. I'll say this before I let everybody go. I had a teacher back in junior high school for assignment, War and Peace, because I guess I was a big mouth. She made me read War and Peace. I had the book, right? For 2 weeks, I had to do a book report.
2 weeks.
2 weeks. And she said, okay, do you have your book report? No, ma'am. No, Mrs. Hickabotham. I do not. Hickabotham, it was her name, by the way. I said, I don't have the report. Well, why? Well, because you told me the way I act, I should go read the book in the closet. We don't have a light in the closet. So every night I went in there for half an hour to read the book. I couldn't read anything. So, how can you expect a book report on me about War and Peace if I could not read it?
Yeah.
Up to the office I went, but you know what? I got out of it because they looked at that and I did exactly, at that age, your mind is like, okay, if the teacher tells you go read a book in the closet, hey, maybe he believed he had to read the book in the closet. She was joking about it, but I knew she was joking, but it was a good excuse.
Yeah. You grabbed a hold of that one and went with it.
Who would want to read War and Peace in the first place?
Yeah, that book is so thick.
That's what I'm saying. Can you imagine you go in the closet every night for 2 weeks and read it? You can't read it in the dark with the door closed. And my dad would come up there and bang on the door. Are you done reading? Dad, I can't read anything. But I was told by Mrs. Hickenbottom to go read it in the closet. He goes, but there's no light in there. That's okay, Dad. I'm doing what I was told to do. Well, why don't you do anything around the house I tell you to? Oh, that's different.
You should have said you're blind from trying to read in the closet.
Yeah. Of course, I did maybe other stuff in the closet with the door closed.
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah. Okay, well, everybody, I want to thank again Whitley for being on, Strieber, and Ed Dames and all that. We had learned a lot tonight, more about Whitley, I think, than we ever did having him on before, because he was more open tonight.
Yeah, he was fantastic tonight, I got to say.
Yeah, and at that point, we had a lot of people on live chat.
We did. You know what's weird is before that Halloween thing, like the year before, I was actually in Upper State New York, probably not far from where he was. That's where I bought his book, the first book, Communion. Read it.
Yeah, good book. You were showing it to me at the beginning of the show.
I read it from front to back.
And between you eating something again tonight.
Oh, that was some coffee sticks, just something.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, again, I just want to say, I don't want to have to turn super chat on and turn off normal chat. And I'm not trying to pressure anybody, but it costs a lot of money to put the show on. And we're in the situation where, I got a lot of subscribers and all that stuff, but we need a little help to pay for the music. The music is $2,500 a year to play on the show. And I had to pay for that all up front. And that, if you like the bumper music and you like the format of the show, if you can afford 99 cents a month to help us out for a cup of tea, which is actually going to go to help pay for the music. Because the other issue we have, JC, I never expected the show to grow as fast as it all of a sudden has done after all these years, since 2017. In the last 4 months, it's like gone viral. You know that.
Yeah, it has. It really has. And
I wasn't prepared for it.
Well, it happened, but who is? It just kind of happened overnight, and it's really taken off. But also what comes with that is costs a lot more overhead, and therefore you need to spend more to make more, and all, it's around.
Yeah,
circle.
but you got to have to spend more to make it. But, you know, again, we're growing. We're going to be, like I said, November 6th, we're going to go to an hour and a half long show instead of an hour. And we have such great guests lined up, I'll tell you that. If you are tired of conventional alternative talk radio like those other shows that repeatedly have the same guests on month after month and only talk about one subject month after month, night after night, week after week, go listen to them. But we try to give variety on this show, and we bring talk radio like it was in the 70s and 80s. I like that format. I like being laid back. I'm not going to be a host, because it's never going to happen. Well, till next Wednesday, everybody have a good one. Catch the Paranormal Doctor on Monday. His show will be uploaded at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern, right here on Night Dreams Talk Radio Network. Everybody have a good night, and thank you for tuning in. I appreciate every one of you out there.
Who's friends with all the night dreamers, talking to you at night? Gary on the radio, but maybe he's not inside. Bigfoot's on his tail, flying UFOs, that's right. Gary's talk show radio, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday night.